Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Model Connection. I would like to take this opportunity to welcome back a photographer that I've had on the earlier show. I had such a very favorable response to that podcast that I thought I've got to have this guy back on here. He and I had just great chemistry on the episode, and we did not get done talking about what we wanted to talk about. So let's do this a second time. Tim Temple, how are you doing,
I'm
sir?
great. Thank you for having me back. By the
Thank
way,
you for
that
coming
was
back.
there
Thank
was.
you.
You're right. I mean, the response was really cool. So thank you for everybody that hit me up from the other episode, and your feedback's been great. And by
Right.
the way, I want to compliment you on the program that you're building, because obviously, from episode to episode, you're clearly seeing the ramp, and I think that's great. I think it's healthy. We're seeing this art community, the photography, the models that are really building here in the Nashville market.
Thank
It's
you, Tim.
kind of
Yes,
awesome.
thank you, Tim. I am gaining more viewers on a daily basis, and you do not believe how good it makes me feel that people are tuning in, listening to the audio version. They are watching the videos. They are commenting. Yes, it's really taking off, and I'm proud of it.
You should be.
I'm proud of it.
I mean, it's like I think I even mentioned this in the last time we spoke, which was that I've heard over the years. I'm sure you have too. A lot of people that will sit around and go, we should really build this something. We should do something. But they don't, and you did. You're building this podcast is specific to the Nashville market, and you see this expanding out, and the interest is growing. And I think I can't even say think. I mean, we know from the responses that you're seeing that like new models are coming in, new shooters are coming in, and the guys that are seasoned are reaching out and are helping the newbies, and it's a cool thing. So thanks
Right.
for putting what you do together, man.
I just wanted to try something different. Taking a dartboard, throw darts at it, see what would stick, and I think this is actually going to work. God, God help me sometimes, but
Good.
I think it's actually going to work. Um, what I wanted to do was to actually promote you as a photographer to the young model, the new model that has only been working 6 months less, even to the experienced model. And you've brought some images this time that I would like to go over with, and we'll talk about 'em, and we just see what we like, what we don't like about them. Okay, so if we can pull up the first images right now, I love this image because even though you've got that stairwell, the staircase, the stairs in the background, you can still keep the model as the main focus. Me personally, everybody's got an opinion. I like the image. To me, I don't know if I would have put the tree on the right hand side, but that's also considered framing. Okay.
Exactly. And so I will defend why I
Yes,
put the tree over there.
please do. Please do.
And by the way, as we get into
We have a
this,
Cisco and we have a Cisco and Ebert type moment here.
sure,
Okay.
let's bounce some stuff around.
Right. Exactly right.
And you're by the way, you're exactly right. It was a framing choice,
Yes. Yes.
which is why when I process a lot of images, I like to use black ink. I've
Right.
always found it interesting. I don't know why, I just do. And so I actually emphasize the black ink in the section that has the tree. So what I'm basically doing is taking where I wanted to do the saturated color, and I'm reducing that on purpose and drawing it back to the model. Um, a lot of shooters have different styles, obviously, which is I think part of the magic of being a shooter, being a photographer, and being a
Mhm.
model for that matter.
Right.
And
Right.
so I'm a believer, and again, about the when I almost hesitate to use rules, because to me rules are made to be broken.
R-
I don't think there's a hard and set rule for anything in art, really. With that said, I very rarely put the star of my image in the middle.
Wow.
I don't like that. I think I find that sterile, for lack of a better word. I know a lot of shooters will strongly disagree, and that they are the center of attention. Therefore, they got to be in the center of the photo. And indeed, I've certainly shot some things that are. But you notice here, she's off center. In fact,
Right.
she's not only off center, she's also, in this case, I wanted to, when I actually processed this image, believe it or not, I focused on her eyes because this was shot at very high definition. So I actually have the eyes constructed to where they are, if you draw a tic-tac-toe image, they're on one of the
Right.
intersections.
Right.
So that's how I got to that balance. And when I was setting this up, I liked the tree because it would contrast against the sunbeams that were coming through. Again, to kind of set up what we're going to look at here for the next few minutes, I'm a natural light shooter.
Right. Right.
Therefore, you're not going to see some of the flash effects that some of you are looking for, and some of you like, and some of you don't like. I prefer natural light, and this is a great image to talk about in regards to natural light. I prefer natural light because I find it to be the most interesting and the most beautiful of all
Mm-hmm.
light.
Mm-hmm.
That's me. Again, I know that some people are going to strongly say, yes, but the flash can do whatever. Well, let's take fill light as an example. One of the reasons that I encourage shooters and I know most of you do, but if you don't, should be shooting in RAW, RAW, is that it captures so much information that I'm able to go in later. And by the way, I am not a Lightroom user at all. And I'll even tell you why. Lightroom, you can't open an image. You have, for whatever reason, you have to open 300 images. I've never understood that. Whatever library that they force you to create,
Yeah.
but I only want this one. Well, we don't care. You have to open it. So I just got
Oh,
out of
no.
Lightroom
Oh,
because in
no.
Photoshop you can just open an image. So I like that. So I go through in my preview software and I narrow it down and then I open it up. So anyway, um, because you're shooting in RAW, you can actually create fills and what would be the flash. However, in lieu of a flash, I'm actually either exaggerating or de-exaggerating, if that's such a word, or de-emphasizing, I guess is a better way to say it, the natural light that's there.
Right.
So
Yes.
I just developed that technique, for better or worse, over the years. Again, I never went to school for this. I'm very much self-taught.
Self-taught.
It's a school of hard knocks, I guess. I made a ton of mistakes. I make mistakes all the time. I think that's something that artists if
Don't
I
we
could
all?
yeah.
Don't we all
Well
make
well,
mistakes?
yes, but I think that, when you've reached a certain, like, number of years or whatever in whatever
Yes.
craft that you pursue, that, people are hoping that you make fewer, and I suppose that is true. But I have found that, that happy accidents are a wonderful thing.
Okay, Don Ross.
Yeah, right? Yeah, one of our great, leaders, if you will. This one, case in point, where you have the sun moving from right to left.
Yes.
That was something I found in post.
Okay, now, jog your memory.
Yeah,
Do you remember where that shot was taken at?
that's in Percy Warner, which is in the Nashville area.
Percy Warner, that is a great background.
Yeah, it is. I was able to, and by the way, this is shot with a telephoto lens, which is something else a lot of people shy away from, I find, in portraiture. Um, Which I understand, I know it does compress and so on, but in this case, that's actually the feeling that I wanted, because, for those of you who don't know, you can also throw a background out of focus easier in a
Yes.
telephoto, so
Yes.
that's why I went. It was shot, for the record, with a, Nikon, 300 millimeter.
Okay, great,
So he throws the
yes.
background out, and, what I did is I just went into a micro focus, and that's something that, you can ask any model that's ever worked with me. I am always going like, give me a minute. I'm setting a focus up because I have found that if you'll just take a few seconds and instead of trusting your autofocus, if you'll just go and manually pick what you want to be razor sharp, which in this image was, believe it or not, her eyes. I was
Wow.
able to do that. And then in post, it just saves me a lot of sharpening, which obviously you get into the pixelization stuff, and I don't want to get into all the tech necessarily, but I found that the leading lines of those stairs were pretty cool, and obviously the leaves, right? 'Cause you've
Fall
got
leaves,
exactly
yes.
where you've got that
Yes.
magical week, and it just happened.
Yes.
This shot, by the way, I constructed this shot, but the concept is her idea.
Good.
She came to me and said, I want to do this thing with a dress and a flowing gown, and she was kind of laying it down. I said, I know where we can do that because I'd shot it Percy Warner
Yeah.
before,
Mhm.
and I wanted that whole flowing stare. What I didn't realize at the time was to the extent of the falling leaves.
Yes.
So we get out there, and all of a sudden, I know what we need to do. So I set it up, and then, just walk up, and I was looking through the camera to put it be on that stare, and then just play straight back into the lens,
Mhm.
and that's what happened. So that's the story on that.
A very good shot, Tim. A
Thank
very
you,
good
man. I
shot.
appreciate that. Thank
Okay,
you.
let's see the next one here.
Again, the things that for better or worse, how I come up with ideas. And I want to credit Tierra happens to be the model in this, Tierra Hernandez. And she's in the Nashville area. And for shooters out there, if she is imaginative and just a great personality, and the camera loves her, and it's really cool. She is not the girl on the stairs, by the way, to be clear, but she's obviously here in the grayscale. Now, what she wanted to do is because she has the multicolored finishes in the hair, she wanted to do something that highlighted that.
Right.
So what she actually did was she's completely laying down across a fallen log in the
Mhm.
woods, and in post production, not only did I see that as grayscale, I saw, oh, what happened if you flip it 90 degrees. And so that's the print that I
Yes.
use. So the hair is actually being pulled by gravity. And I tend to shoot, I can't say I tend to shoot, it's not, a lot of times I won't spin or use anything like this. But in this instance, I just found it more interesting. What if the hair defied gravity?
Right.
And
Right.
that's how this exact look came along. And again, it's something that I have found as a shooter is that if you can get your model to come up with the ideas are almost invariably better than mine
Mhm.
because they really know this is going to make me shine. This is my fortes. This is something I've wanted to achieve. And if I'm able to capture that, then everybody
They
wins.
should know.
Yeah. Well, they should. True.
They should know. Yes. They
Well,
should know.
Tierra does. And shooters in the audience, you should reach out. She's on Facebook or whatever. I hope she doesn't mind me doing this. I don't think so, but she's very cool and a wonderful model. So that's the story behind that. But it's certainly my one of my forays into grayscale, which I admire very much. I love grayscale.
On the black and white images, okay, now let's back up just a second here. On the black and white images, the arms, how do we keep from actually blowing those arms out so you lose any definition?
To avoid blowing them out.
Yes.
Sure. I'm happy to speak to. I'll put this. I'll tell you how I do it.
Okay, okay.
There's a great quote. I'm happy to credit this. Robert De Niro says it in the movie Casino, where he's in one of his big monologues yelling at somebody in his office. And he goes, "There's the right way, the wrong way, and the way I do things." And I thought, I'm totally stealing that because that's how I shoot. It is like, I just, and it's all right. So to answer your question, which is a great question, how do you avoid it? What I do is I'm big believer in histograms on site, not in post, yes, of course, but I'm not going to get into what a histogram is right now, but I'm assuming that if you have a digital camera, you've come across them.
Oh, yes, you've had to use it every
And
now and then.
so what I do is I set up the exposure, and again, depending on subject. In this instance, let's take this shot. I set up the exposure so that nothing burned because I'm shooting raw. Remember I talked earlier about, raw is important, at least to me, the way I shoot. So I knew I had the digital information. If I avoided blowing out anything, so I just kept everything off of the right-hand wall, then it had data in it
Right.
that I could correct anything I wanted later. So that's how I avoided it. Now, someone else may have the correct way to do it is, well, then good for you.
Right. Yeah, do
What
it your
I
way.
do is I just make sure there's data. Now, of course, as you, obviously, because you're a shooter, there are times where I do want to blow it out.
Yeah.
I want that hard white when I
Yes.
get in the
Right.
post already done for me.
Right.
In this shot, plus it was actually done in not just a wooded area. We were in the woods, so it wasn't like I had a ton of light. So it was this interesting balance where I needed to gather the information while at the same time don't blow anything out while you're trying to get into the shadows.
Exactly right. Yes,
And
yes.
that's how I did it. And then in post, I started, because obviously you've got all the little gadgets, so you can I can push a little bit here, I can pull out some detail there, and
Yeah.
um, Yeah, so, some Photoshop magic, and there you go. I should point out, by the way, that, when I say Photoshop magic in this particular instance, I mean, there isn't any, manipulation of
Mhm.
of her. I'm talking about bringing out different tones or pushing them back into the shot and so forth.
Right, right. Very good shot, Tim. A very good
Well,
shot.
thank you, man, I appreciate that.
Okay, let's hit the next one now.
By the way, the leaf was a happy accident.
Happy accident.
Yeah, that wasn't planned. It just was there. This is another, great model, by the way, you shooters out there, Morgan Kurtz, she lives out, closer to the, Memphis area. Fantastic look, as you can see, but, one of just an absolute sweetheart and has ideas and is creative and is very outspoken and, just a pleasure to work with. I actually threw this into the mix because this is something because I'm such a big believer in having fun in post-production. And the way and again, right way I do things.
Right.
I don't approach any 2 pictures the same. I do not, and I know a lot of guys do, and it is the more practical. Let me be very clear. The most practical thing you can do is once you've decided this is the look I want, is you actually have a template. Some go as far as to create macros. It will just do whatever it is you do, and you do it over and over and over and over and over, and you get that exact look every time
Mhm.
because the computer does the exact same. I don't do that. I start with the raw image, and then I go, what does this thing do? And then I just look for ideas. This one I brought up because I thought it would be fun to create her on old paper. So if
Yes.
you'll notice, obviously, there's cracks running
Right.
through it. There's where it's been folded.
Uh-huh.
All of that I created in of course, post production. The whole concept was there was a bunch of old cars that were gathered in front of a store out near Memphis. And it was a hot rod, kind of a small hot
Yeah.
rod gathering. And
Uh-huh.
Morgan and I have shot together on and off for probably for 2 years or so. And so she gave me heads up, this thing's going on. And I just drove out there and she's climbed into this truck, and that's what happened.
That is
And
a very cool shot.
yeah,
Very cool shot.
it's great. And kudos to her. I love working with her, and just to have the ability later to say, but what if this was like in a 1960s film, kind of a finish, and then it
Mhm.
was really old, and it was in somebody's collection, and that's how I approached it.
That is a very good shot. I love her look, her facial look. She's got the outfit, the hair bow, th uh, her top matches the hair bow. It just honestly fits.
Yeah,
It fits.
yeah, and all of that is, to be very clear, all of that is her. She creates the persona and the outfits and everything. It was all her vision going into this,
Kudos to her.
for sure.
Great shot. Hot
Morgan
rod.
again.
Hot rod. Yes.
Same day. Switched out outfits, obviously. Now, clearly she goes from the beat pinup and moves into contemporary.
Yes, yes.
And this is shot, she's standing behind a very decorative, and I'm sorry, I'm not really a car guy, but it's a hot rod.
Yes.
And I love the way that the backlighting was playing. So I wasn't, because everything is so chromed out. Obviously, the challenge, as you can appreciate as a shooter, is you've got blazing chrome
Yes.
and dealing with her facing away from the sun and everything else.
Right,
So I
yes.
wasn't afraid to lose decal. I'm sorry, it's what? The intake and the carburetor. Okay.
Perfect.
It's good to learn new things. I am so woefully ignorant of cars. It's embarrassing. So I thought that the juxtaposition of kind of this almost like a Stonehenge-ish sort of a look was kind of interesting. And then if you'll notice, and I again, one of the rules is you never cut your picture exactly in half. This one I did on purpose. So the intake is basically the halfway point, and I'm
Mhm.
using the top half to frame her, and then everything else just falls down into the kind of this cacophony of the mechanics underneath.
Again, it's all in how we envision the final image to look,
Yes.
how we want it to look, what we envision the final image to be in our minds. And you've done a very good job in doing that. Very good job. Very good image. It looks like she's got a white wall tire on the vehicle behind her. Could be a classic car from the 50s, maybe,
Yeah, that's
possibly
exactly
60s.
what it was, and it's got the big gangster white wall, sitting
Yes.
there in the back, and, I know a lot of shooters have different approaches on this, but I can tell you how this particular image came about. In fact, this is one of the things that, if memory serves from the last episode that you and I did, we have two very different styles when it comes to shooting, where you
Oh,
shoot
yes.
relatively few frames.
Yes, yes.
I, on the other hand, celebrate digital, and I will shoot hundreds of frames because I just think it's the most wonderful thing to have later. So, again, this shot, and for those of you who can't see it, is first of all, it's grayscale, and I deliberately pushed some contrast. So there's a lot of beautiful deep black ink, and there's some really fiery whites that are going on. And Morgan, who is a brunette, is throwing her head back, and she's basically sitting on the ground next to this tire. So what I'm using is the tire with some of the curvature, bringing it up actually into a leading line with her. But how I got this is I shot numerous images very fast, one behind the other, and I had her move in slow motion. And when I went through them later, I was just looking for that one image where that was that. In this case, it happens to be her laughing. Now, there's some where she was quite serious and so on. So the whole where we did this, I don't know, 20 seconds maybe, but I was looking for that magic one thing where the light converged and then with her. And also, it was also shot a little bit wider. We can talk maybe a little bit about cropping. I don't think we've really discussed that, and I guess on a show with both models and shooters, we could do that. Cropping, for example, when we talked about the one where she's standing behind the intake,
Right.
that was actually shot in camera, designed to be cut at in half with the cowling. This one. It was actually shot a little bit wider, and I wanted to tighten it up because I wanted to do a little extra focus on the eyelashes. Is how I arrived at that.
Great, great.
Do you do in your work? Do you use vignettes at all?
I started 2 years ago, but I never quite got the hang of it. I think I just not gotten the practice that I need to really understand how to use them. So I just kind of put them
Yeah,
on the shelf.
because I live with them. I just once I discovered them as, hey, look what this can. For those of you who don't know, a vignette is it can be throwing light instead of dark. I use them for dark, and basically what it does is it puts a donut of shadow around a portion of the image that you assign, and that's very broad strokes. So it's basically what it is. And when they were first invented, it was designed just to highlight the center of the image, and then all the surrounding, call it the edge of the image, would be increasingly dark. And now with the magic of digital and with the computers, you can adjust and move those. So it's a lot more. And this shot, for those of you who are not just listening but can actually see it, one of the things here, that one of the reasons that when you first bring this shot up, I can promise you, almost all of you are immediately going to notice the eye, and then the ear, and then you're going to, because in this case it's also kind of curvy, so you're going to see the bod and so on. But I actually developed the light so that naturally the eye's gonna hit at her eyes and then down through the hair first, and then it's gonna expand out from there. This all may happen in a millisecond, but I can promise you, physiologically, it's almost always what's gonna happen. The capture doesn't have that, but by manipulating the shadows going around the image, you can almost force the viewer, for lack of a better word, to have that initial experience. And then later, of course, they explore it on their own. So, you also we've mentioned prior where you how to bring constant focus or attention to
Yes.
the subject.
Yes, yes,
That's one
yes.
of the ways I force it. On the screen now, we've got a close-up portrait of a young lady. This one actually was shot next to a waterfall. Like the whole day was supposed to be a waterfall shoot, but this one, had, of course, had nothing to do with it. It's meaning the waterfall. It's grayscale, and she's got her hair. I believe it was a light auburn, but again, in grayscale, we're obviously seeing tones. And she has pulled that back almost in like a slick down sort of a fashion to her left. And when I was shooting her, something that really struck me was her eyes. She has very large, naturally just beautiful eyes and extraordinary complexion. For those of you who can see this image, a lot of you are thinking that I retouched the complexion, and I did not. I mean,
Wow.
that's actually her. And by the way, you talk about new models. This was her first shoot. She'd never shot before.
Wow. Good shot.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Good shot.
This is Claire Cunningham. Some of you may know her in the music industry. She has been working in and around Nashville for a while. Singer-songwriter out of Ireland,
Wow.
actually. Lives full-time in Nashville now. And in addition to being a great singer, she's got this natural, fantastic, just a nasty blues voice with natural gravel and just a great storyteller voice. It was fantastic. She's also got the David Bowie eyes.
Hmm.
She's got one green, one blue, which you
Wow.
cannot see in the shot, by the way. She's also got almost no body fat whatsoever because she's obsessed with working out. And so she
Wow.
called me up one day. We actually met through music, and then
Yeah.
we ended up actually doing a lot more in photography than we did with studio. But she called me up, and she had access to this gym, and she wanted to do some shots. So this is one of the few where I technically can't say it's natural light because this was in a basement. It was in some
Yeah.
hotel,
Right.
but it's all the light that was there. I'm not using strobes or flashes.
Right.
We just had, it's part of the challenge. If you're going to shoot with an ambient or available light,
Right,
it's what's
right.
available, so we got to make it work. So what was great about this one to me is, again, a chance to use the black ink and, black out a lot of the background and so on. She wears a lot of ink, so you could tie that right in.
Yeah.
And I like that the light that's over the top just highlighted this natural, curly, blonde Irish hair, which is really cool. And of course, her muscle tone just popped. And this is a single source that's directly over her. You can see another one there a little bit in the background.
Yeah.
This will also, again, for those of you who can see this, you can see that it's angled. And this is something else that again, right way, wrong way I do things. I don't like doing a lot of photos that are just exactly level or they're exactly 180 straight up and down. That's me. It's a style. There's nothing wrong with doing it. And in fact, several of the images we have looked at in this episode, I'm doing exactly that. This one, I just found it to be more interesting. And this was done in camera. I was just thinking like this. I didn't rotate it later. I like doing leading lines that move in diagonals. So I just tilted it, and I also liked it. It just makes her look like she's leaning more into the. And for those, again, if you can't see this, what Claire is doing is she's working out, standing up, and she's working out on a machine for, I believe this is for triceps, and she's wearing workout clothes and shorts, and she wears a lot of tattoos. So this is all about like tattoos down both arms and legs and so on. And so there's really a lot of intense light over her, and then there's a lot of black and shadows in the background. And anyway, I thought that tilt just added a little bit more of an energy where
Right.
it gives the impression of leaning into the machinery.
Right. So the concept, the idea for this shot, was that your idea or was it hers?
It was neither. This was totally organic, the shoot. Other than obviously I knew I would shoot Claire. We knew each other, and
right.
she's going to be working out. That's all I knew.
Right.
And this is one where, we obviously just had some machines. I just get on that one and just see what happens. So I was just looking through the lens and said, okay, I think we're working. We tilted it a little bit. And then if memory serves, I just had her pulled down that would emphasize the tricep a little bit, just make it pop. And then we took a handful of shots and that was it. You know what the hardest thing was? I just remember this. In this shot, which you as a shooter would appreciate, most other could not care less. The hardest part of getting this shot was not blowing out her right sneaker because she's wearing white sneakers, and that one was right in that spotlight.
Yes.
And I actually, we did a series, and then I quick checked the histogram. It's not going to, because I went for, it's just me. Whatever reason, I wanted to save the detail in the sneaker. Most people wouldn't care. So I said, can you do that again? I'm just going to do like another 5 or 6, and then, took a bigger, faster shutter.
Right.
But it saved it, just enough data in there to put a little detail in the sneaker. In photography, when I say blowing out, I'm talking about you have exposed the image so loud. In other words, it's so bright that anything white is literally pure white. There is no detail left in that whatsoever.
Right.
And that's the thing, whether you're on doesn't matter if you're, at least in my experience, if you're on film or if you're on, in my case, shooting digital, once you've crossed that barrier and you're literally shooting pure white and it blows out, there's no what the camera is telling you is that there's no data in it,
Right.
which means there is no detail to salvage because the camera never captured that
Right.
detail for you to find later.
Exactly
And the
right.
way I shoot is I love options.
Mhm.
I know there's another school of thought is you don't want options. You have your image and what I'm trying to say, your vision, and so you just go and get it. And I can't say I can't. I do sometimes shoot like that, but in this instance, coming back to the point, this white sneaker has this bright spotlight is dead on it. And so I ended up having to do a second series because I just by happenstance, I happened to, let's see, whoa, hold on. I just already see that speaker's going to, the sneaker's blown out, meaning hugely overexposed, too bright. So she was very gracious and just let me do a second pass where we sped the shutter up a bit
Right.
and saved it.
You got one in light, one in shadow, and you're right. That shoe is not blown out. You can actually see the shoelaces.
Yeah, it's just enough. It's
Yeah,
just
just enough.
there. It's not the focal point,
Right.
but when you start to explore the image, if it's grabbed you,
Right.
and this was actually shot with a series for the hotel in mind. They're
Okay.
going to end up using these for like promotion for the gym
Right.
and so on.
Right.
And so, not knowing really where they were going to run with it, that's another reason I wanted that shoe to be saved, just in case. So that's the story on that.
All right, good story. Very colorful. That looks like probably a summertime image in the park somewhere. Looks like they're getting ready to have a picnic. Summertime picnic.
It's this very elaborate picnic. The model is wearing a burgundy vest over a white, you'd almost think of it, and maybe it was, I never thought to ask, a man's dress shirt. It has cuffs with cufflinks, almost, I want to say British kind of looking, if that makes any sense. She deliberately chose to exaggerate her eye makeup. In this particular shot, you don't see it really a lot, but she's not only got the big 60s blue going on, she's actually
Right.
got some really hard yellows and golds that are loud that are in it. In this particular shot, you don't. Her hair is pulled back kind of in a loose sort of I guess, bun, for lack of a better word, but it's still very
Yes.
flowy and loose, and both hands are being brought up to exaggerate that. It is very late summer. This was actually, for those of you in the Nashville market, was also shot at Percy Warner, because there's also a grove of trees there that give you the background. However, despite how elaborate this is, and we're talking, for those of you who can't see this shot, I'm literally talking, without exaggeration, silver multi-tiered cake platters with cupcakes, decorated cupcakes. There's very specific outlay of fruit and designs, and there's crystal and decanters. And okay,
A lot of thought went into the preparation of this photo, let me tell you.
except that it didn't. That's the little story behind this image. I hope you guys get a chance to see it. We were shooting Percy Warner. This is why I'm a natural light shooter, because I don't think you could have set up all the strobes and everything else. Okay. There was a family that was having this picnic,
So it was their setup then.
and then they all left. I don't know why. They abandoned it. So I told the model, don't touch anything in case they come back. I promise we didn't touch anything. I wish they didn't. But just get behind it. She already had the outfit, and it just hit me that ties in. So I said, I'm going to set up. You just get on the other side of that. Don't touch anything of theirs, And we knocked down like 100 frames, just do this, but this is the keeper that I like because among other things, there's a little bit of a sun flare that's coming through the top of one of the crystal
Yeah,
decanters.
yeah.
And it's this is actually one I keep in my portfolio because to your point, because it looks so planned and
Yeah,
elaborate.
yes.
Yet it was a complete total accident. Just I don't know why they
Little happy
abandoned it.
accidents,
I
huh?
have no idea. I noticed later it was gone, so I assume either they came back or someone ran off of the picnic, I guess, but that's the story. Just a great model to work with. And now this one, I mentioned earlier, the waterfall.
Yes.
This is one from the same shoot.
Yes.
Obviously, this time in the water. And this is the story behind this. And again, for those of you who can't see it, it's a woman in a red bikini. She's got a kind of a green clover, I guess it is. That's
Yes.
a tattoo. Fantastic blue eyes. She's pale skin with black hair, and she's actually in a very soft waterfall. And it's by no means her first shoot, but the story, as I understand it, behind this is that she had really gotten into physical development in working out and so on. And this was one of her kind of for lack of a better way to say, it's kind of like one of her victory shots.
Yes.
And just a fantastic model. She's very natural in front of the camera. And again, this is also, I think, an example, and it comes obviously down to style, but this is where the model's idea, in my experience, almost always trumps any idea that I'm going to have. Completely her idea. She goes, what if I got in the waterfall and I just started posing? And this is actually very close. I mean, I'm probably 6 feet away from her.
Right.
Very unusual in a waterfall shot. For those of you who haven't shot waterfalls,
Oh,
it's
yes.
pretty rare you're going to be that close. But it was in this exact section. I mean, any other section wouldn't work, but this really gentle flowing water, you could get away with it. So this is she just goes, what if I get in there? I said, let's find out. And it was completely her idea to do it. Now, the way I composed this, and again, this was all edited, the finishing was not in camera, but I mentioned earlier, I like shooting the odd angle and
Right.
creating angles because if you just take, and for those of you who can see it, obviously this will make a lot better sense. But what I've done is I've angled it maybe 5 degrees or so, leaning towards the right.
Right.
I
yes.
just thought that the leading line in that made it better because obviously water would, of course, be in that exact straight line falling down. I just found it, again, personal taste. I thought the angle made it a little different. Plus, I'll tell you how I arrived at that angle. She has obviously, for those of you, again, who can see this, she has fantastic blue eyes, like laser blue eyes.
Right,
And
yes.
those are, that's actually her eyes, by the way. Her eyes really do that. So obviously, when I'm working with a model that has that kind of an attribute, I want to bring it out. And the way that I shoot, for, again, good, bad, or indifferent, I tend to think in a tic-tac-toe pattern on the screen. And then I like to put focal points of interest on any of those intersections.
Yes.
It could be all 4 or 1 or whatever. In this case, I drew her eyes so that they were on the top right intersection. So that's how I arrived at the framing and the angle, and then it just draws the viewer directly up into the eyes, and then they can explore from there. And you add we mentioned earlier, a little bit of vignette, you throw that in and kind of shade some light around, and
yes.
that's how the photo happened.
And photography, as we know, is all about angles.
It's to me, there's a lot of things. It's a part of the magic of photography is that exact moment where the light corresponds with what the model wanted to convey and the lens agreed. It has to be that wonderful combination where that all happens. And again, in this instance, to have, a model with that kind of an eye is just, it's brilliant.
Great.
It's that we mentioned it. I think in the last episode we mentioned it too. It's that synergy.
Yes.
And you can't fake that in my experience.
No.
It's either there or it is not.
Right.
But if it is, that's when you're going to get those portfolio shots.
This podcast is produced by To the Moon Creative, located in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Whether you're an established or a new podcaster, To the Moon Creative offers the highest quality audio and HD multi-camera video podcasts. And if you already record your own podcasts, To the Moon Creative also offers affordable audio and video editing services with guaranteed fast turnaround time. For more information, find us online at www.ttmcreative.com. At To the Moon Creative, we do more than just get your podcast off the ground. We help you take it to the moon.
Got some great images there, Tim.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for showing them.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You have shot in the Miami market.
Mhm.
You've shot in the Minneapolis market.
Yeah.
You shot here in the international market. In your opinion, what are some mistakes that we photographers are making?
Oh, wow. That's such a, I've never been asked that. That's such a great question, though. Okay. This is completely off the cuff, but
Yes, it
I'm
is.
going to give you that's all right. People can just write hateful stuff underneath the thing. I don't care. I've been hated on before. I think one of the mistakes that photographers make is creating templates in post-production.
Okay.
I have to disagree with you guys. Now, by the way, with one caveat, I know that in wedding photography, you've got to get a lot of photos done fast.
Yes.
I totally get creating macros for that. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about working with models. To be very clear for people that, well, he's just denigrating. And no, that's not my point. I view each image as an entity unto itself.
Right.
And that's why I don't use templates. I want each thing, it might be minute, but there will be something that's unique to every one of the photos that I work on. And why do I care about templates? Because a template guarantees that you're just going to hit go. Literally in Photoshop, there's a red button and you just go, actually it's an arrow, and it just create, whatever macro you told it to do, it'll just do that to that image. With computer precision. And then you go to the next one, you do it again, and so on and so on. And I think the same thing happens in my experience, since you asked,
Yes.
for guys that always shoot in the same studio. Because once you've got that light set up and you drew that X, you know who you are,
You don't
draw
wanna
that
change
X
it.
on the floor. That's right.
You don't want to
Okay,
change.
no one touch anything ever. And you know what? For that one shoot, I'll bet it looked fantastic.
Right.
You nailed it. You had the perfect backlighting, and don't touch anything. And then you brought in another model, and that model was different. She was taller or shorter, had a different dress on, a different attitude. She was doing, doesn't matter. She's doing boudoir. She was doing, that doesn't matter. The point is, it wasn't the other model. It wasn't the same, but you kept the same lighting and the same X on the floor and the same everything else. So now you're creating the same technical capture, but the attitude and the model is very different. So if I had a direct answer to a direct question, I think that the number one mistake, not numerical, but the mistakes that photographers make are getting into the same habits. And to your point, which I love that you bring this up, is not thinking outside the box, but actually creating a box and then getting inside your own box and just living in it.
Yes.
And I would say, if you want to freshen things up, is that don't go with your templates.
Right.
Try shooting more organically, and I understand some people like, who are you to tell us? And I agree with you, but I will say this: if you'll try that, you're going to start even with happy accidents. I never thought of that before, and it's like when I throw filters at stuff and I'm in post. I mean, I will pick, like, I could be doing the most elegant portrait, as an example. And then I'll go to grunge filters.
Yes.
Because what if that did one magic thing on one part of that photo?
Mm-hmm.
You don't know. And it's going to cost you 30 seconds? Try it. And all of a sudden you go, I never thought of that. But it added this flavor, this spice. So I don't know if that's exactly why what you were asking me.
Yeah,
But
yes,
I would say
was,
that I think. Let's see what other.
Now, real quick.
Yeah.
What advice would you give the model that has been in the business, say 6 months?
On that premise, I'm going to assume that you've already gone through, and maybe not, some basic posing and kind of maturing with that. I'm going to throw some little caveats out there. With that in mind, if you've been in it 6 months, I think you should look at who you've been shooting with. Obviously, if you've had bad experiences, then let's just put those aside, because I'm going to assume that you were smart enough to not do that again. And look at other shooters, and it won't be hard. You can look at them on, I promise you, just do a search Nashville photographer on Facebook, and a cajillion pages are going to show up. And it's all free to you once you're on Facebook. And I'm by no means pro Facebook guy, but come on. I mean, you can go look for free.
Right.
Start looking at other shooters. And I keep saying guys. I mean, there's some great girl shooters out
Yes,
there.
there
And
are.
so, when I say guys, think of it as the more generic. I'm not trying to ignore female shooters, which are wonderful. And they actually bring a great attitude that, which is the point that, a guy shooter isn't going to have, and vice versa. But the point is, find some shooters you haven't worked with yet. It's real simple. And if you'll just reach out to them and say, I like your work, would you be interested in doing something with me? You're going to find that a lot of these shooters are going to be really positive. And they're gonna take a look. I'm assuming, as you mentioned, 6 months in, you've got some kind of portfolio.
Should have.
Now,
Now,
we can parse how good it is one way or the other. But you've got something, and they can look at what you've done, and they could say, "Why don't we get together? And have you thought of this? Or we could try that." And you know what? After you've talked a couple times, maybe they're not your shooter. That's okay. But I would say, to direct answer to your question, if you're 6 months in, let's shake up your portfolio a little bit. Let's augment it. Let's try something you haven't tried before. Try pushing your boundaries a little bit. I'm not saying do something you're absolutely uncomfortable with or whatever, but there's no reason that you can't, when you're ready, get out there and find a photographer that you really can trust to deliver.
Yes.
Now, I know that's easier said than done. But when you have a photographer that you form that as you talk about with the chemistry, you got that synergy going, give that guy or girl another call and say, I've got an idea, or I've always wanted to try this. And all of a sudden you'll find, if you'll just start looking at new shooters and then going at the same time back to the ones that you've had great results with, but with fresh ideas. Don't replicate what you've already done. You know why? Because you've already done it.
Right.
You don't need more of that. What you need is something that's fresh and different. And as you can probably tell, if nothing else, I tend to be kind of anti-template. And, I'll give you a real practical reason. Besides, doing something fresh for yourself and being interesting, your portfolio, once you start taking that, be it to an agency or to whomever you're going to work with, and you want to ask for money now.
Right.
The one that's going to grab the attention is the one that's going to get passed around in that boardroom, or it's going to get passed to the decision maker.
Right.
Right. If you've got just the generic stuff, you know who else does? Every other model that sent their portfolio too.
Everybody else is same shot. Yes.
Set yourself apart. Now, again, I know that's easy to throw out, and you've got to arrive at what does that mean on your own. So back to your simple question, I've horribly belabored. Just try some new shooters, some new ideas.
Yes.
And I think you'll be, obviously wisely, but you're going to be very happy with the result.
Tim, real quick, tell our listeners and our viewers how they can contact you.
I would love to hear from you guys. And by the way, TFP or Trade for Print, I am very open to doing it. I can't guarantee that always, to also be clear, because I do this. But if you would like to work with me, reach me. I am Tim Temple on Facebook. You can reach me via Temple Imagery on Facebook as well, or on Instagram. And straight up email, which is probably the easiest for me actually, is info at templeimagery.com. And you can check out my landscape work at templeimagery.com. If you'd like to see some of my model portfolio work, hit me up. And let's talk about the kind of shoot that you're after, and then I can show you some work that, assuming I've done it, in the vein, and then you can see if we're a fit. But I'd love to hear from you. So that's how to do it.
Great, Tim. And ladies, I can just tell you, by listening to him, viewing his work, you would not go wrong in hiring this photographer to do your portfolio work. Tim is an awesome guy. Highly recommend him.
I appreciate that, man. Thank you
Tim,
very
thank
much.
you for being my guest here
My
on
pleasure.
this podcast. It has been It has been just so enjoyable just sitting here talking to you. I would love to do it again.
Anytime.
Anytime.
I love your podcast, man. Seriously, I
Thank you
do.
so very much.
Anytime.
Thank you so very much. And to the listeners and the watchers out there, thank you for listening to this episode of the Model Connection. A goodbye and good night.